All right, we're back. We're back. We're back. Tough loss for Michigan State. Very tough loss. I mean, honestly, going into this game and my college picks that me and my co-host Truckin did Saturday, I said, "Hey, look, I got Michigan State, right?" And he said, "Well, man, you gotta watch out for Boston College." I was like, "Man, I haven't watched Boston College play. I watched Michigan State play, and I feel like that. Yes, Michigan State is gonna pull this out, right?" But unfortunately, they didn't. But I will say this. And someone may say, "Oh, well, you're just being biased," but I'm being completely honest. I felt like that Michigan State at no point in that game, even when you factor in all four of the turnovers, I still feel like after watching the game, Michigan State was still the better team. I really do. The fact that Michigan State turned the ball over four times, and not saying Boston College played a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but you turn the ball over four times and you do not blow out your opponent. I think that says a lot about Michigan State, right? Um, like I said, I still feel like they were the better team, but the better team doesn't always win, right? The better team doesn't always win. So I'm gonna start with some of the good. Well, all of the good that I could take away from the game, and then we're gonna get into the bad, right? We're gonna get into the bad. So Michigan State defense, four sacks, five tackles for losses, and that's good, right? And that was one of the things that I talked about dating back to the first game, right? Obviously, they had seven sacks in the first game, which again, you can't just expect that type of performance every single week. But I said, hey, look, if they can average about two, maybe two and a half sacks a game, I think they'll be fine, right? And they're pretty much kind of on that trajectory right now. And I think that is something that is going to help them if they can, apply that type of pressure and keep that type of consistency going in terms of the sacks, more so the tackles for losses, because sacks are kind of hard to come by, right? But obviously, if you're getting sacks, you're getting tackles for losses, you're getting pressures, you're getting quarterbacks kind of off their spot, and I think that that's going to help, right? I think it's going to help, and they're going to need that, right? They're going to need that. Um, Aiden Child uses his legs a lot, but I have to say it's kind of good and bad. It's good because Aiden Childs uses his legs. It's bad because the reason he was using his legs was so much was because Michigan State, not Michigan State, but Boston College was applying a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure, right? It was something that I hadn't seen the previous three games where Aiden Childs looked to have to do so much. And Coach Smith made mention of it in the post game where he said at one point in time it looked like, hey, look, Aiden Childs is the only source of offense that we have. In those runs, in some instances, it looked that way. Like, hey, look, the offense is only going to move, it's not going to move unless Aiden Childs runs the ball, right? So it kind of looked like that a few times, right? Penalties. That's something that I spoke about. I'm not gonna stand wants to fall. It's something I spoke about previously, right? The penalties. Been dealing with double digit penalties for the first three games of the season, and against Boston College, you end the game with three penalties, right? Which that is great, right? That is something that you want to minimize as much as you can because you do not want to be in a situation, especially against this tougher schedule that's coming up. You don't want to give away free yards, right? I mean, you just don't. You don't want to give away free yards because, especially if you're in a situation, if it's like third and 10 or something like that, and you stop them short, and you have a idiotic penalty, hands to the face, pass interference, or anything like that, and you turn around and you extend the drive, roughing the passer or anything like that. So you don't want those type of penalties, right? You don't. I mean, you're not hoping for no penalties is great, but if you can get it down to low single digits, two, three, four, maybe even five, I think you'll be doing fine, right? Because sometimes uh, the impact of a penalty can be different based on when it occurs, right? So people may not feel like a penalty that happens in the first quarter is as bad as if that same said penalty happened in the fourth quarter and there's 2 minutes left on the 2 minutes left in the game, right? So, but three penalties, man. I mean, you can't ask for too much more, man. I mean, you can, but that's a good start. It really is. Um, Jake Velling was a big target tonight. Well, not tonight, but the night the game was played. He was a big target. in terms of, he ended up matching his season total up into this game, right? He caught 6 passes for 77 yards. And I think that's going to be something interesting to kind of see if they're going to continue to involve him in the offense as they did last night, because I thought he played a good game. Even though I do attribute two of the interceptions that Aiden Childs threw to him, I don't blame Jake Velling for those interceptions, but we'll get into that. But and obviously Foster Johnson stepped up. Foster with a big time catch, down the sideline. Well, not down the sideline, but kind of on like a skinny post type of route. That was a big time catch for him. And like I said, the absence of Nick Marsh and Glover, I do think that you're gonna. I mean, depending on how long those two guys are out, they are going to have to find, other guys that are going to be able to step up. And Coach Smith made mention of that, right? That, hey, look, we got to find guys that are going to step up. We're missing some of the guys. So we have to have guys step up. So it's good to see Foster, Velling, and Johnson step up. So hopefully in the event that Marsh and Glover are out next week and, kind of into the near future, those guys have shown that they can make plays happen, right? But I mean, that's about all the good I took away from the game. I'm gonna be honest. That's about all the good I could take away. And like I said, some people may say, look, you're being biased, but again, I still felt like Michigan State was the much better team, and they should have won this game. In my opinion, they should have won this game going away. Because even after 4 turnovers, well, even after 3 turnovers, right? Because the last turnover was the proverbial nail in the coffin, right? But after 3 turnovers, they were still in position to win the game, right? So I think that says a lot about them. Says a lot about the coaching staff, right? But again, not taking anything away from Boston College. They won the game. Simple as that. They won the game. So let's move on. Run game. It's been a struggle, right? It has been a struggle, but I think this was probably, I mean, when we look at the level of competition, right, this has to be the worst performance of the season, right? Um, Lynch and Carter combined for 70 yards, and Lynch had 61 of those, right? So that lets you know Nick Carter only had 9, but they had 127 total, but 57 of that came from Aiden Childs, right? So I don't necessarily know. Like I said, as the season goes on, the schedule gonna get much tougher. And if Michigan State can effectively run the ball, all of those play action passes that ends up with those big deep shots down the field, they're simply not gonna be there because teams are not gonna respect the play fake, right? And I've kind of noticed this kind of even going back to the first game against FAU. It feels like that Lynch Adams has a he seems to be a little bit more successful running the ball than Nate Carter does. Now, again, it's a lot of variables that could go into that. It could go down to play calling, go down to down and distance. It can go down to a multitude of different things. But it does seem like Lynch Adams is a little bit more consistent or getting more consistent yards than Nate Carter is. So, but the run game is still it's still abysmal, right? And May could notate that and write that up to the fact that they had to make some changes up front on the offensive line, but even still, even with the changes, even before the changes, running the ball has been tough for Michigan State this season. And watching a game like this, it has to improve mightily because obviously you go back to the Maryland game. Well, Aiden Childs threw 3 interceptions, but he kind of canceled those 3 interceptions out with 3 passing touchdowns. But then you have a game like last night where he throws 3 interceptions and there's nothing to cancel those interceptions out. They're just 3 interceptions, right? So they're gonna have to improve on that. I mean, I don't know what it's gonna take, right? I don't know. I don't know if they have the personnel up front to do it effectively or what. But I feel like maybe getting that addressed is is much easier than hoping that Aiden Childs can, you know, progress at an expedient rate right now, right? I just that's just me, right? Um, So getting out to the interceptions, right? So I watched all three, and the third one is the only one, in my opinion, that I'm really just gonna say, that was just terrible. The first one he threw, there was some pressure in his face, but again, the people that say this is like pressure's in your face, but you still got to step up and deliver the pass. I mean, all that is nice, but a lot of those individuals that are saying that, y'all are not saying that while someone is barreling down on you and you having to stand in the pocket, chest exposed, and try to deliver a pass. It was just slightly out in front of Jake Velling. I believe that was a target on that particular pass, and the guy made an interception, right? You know, the pass could have been a little bit closer to him, things like that. But again, man, the man got hit, right? So I kind of chalked it up to that. The second one, I don't know. It could have been some miscommunication because it looked like a situation where the guy should have kind of sat down right there, but he kind of continued on and it ended up being a pass behind him. Or Aiden Shots could have just flat out missed him. I'm just trying to think about what quite possibly could have been instead of just saying, "Oh, we just flat out missed the guy," which he very well could have just flat out missed the guy, right? Coach Smith made mention that, hey, look, it was raining. We saw the rain, and the ball could have slipped out of his hand. Any of those particular things, right? But it ended up being a turnover, so ending the drive, and that's what it is. And then the last one, again, man, that's again, like I said, that's the one that I really blame on him, right? Because I don't know what he was thinking. Maybe it was a situation where, and I know this, and this is one of the things that I hate about football, college, NFL in general, is the whole aspect of, well, let's just throw the ball up in the air and let's hope for a pass interference, right? I don't like that, and more times than not, they end up getting the call, right? And I was just watching the game just tonight. I was watching the Falcons play the Kansas City Chiefs. Kirk Cousins, they're in the red zone. He throws a pass to Kyle Pitts in the end zone. The Kansas City defender is face guarding Kyle Pitts. He does not turn his back. He does not look to try to make a play on the ball. Referee standing right there looking dead at it. He doesn't throw the flag. And obviously, if I'm a Falcons fan, I'm upset because, like, by the letter of the law, by the text, that is pass interference. That should have been a 15-yard penalty, put us right there at the goal line. We very well could have, ran it in, got a touchdown, and went up on the Chiefs, and then tried to play defense to keep Patrick Mahomes off the board. But it didn't happen that way, right? They didn't call it. And a part of me was like, I'm happy they didn't call it because I look at it like this. I look at guys, receivers, watch receiving videos, watch them make amazing one hand catches. Eli, AU Manor made a big time one hand grab against Syracuse yesterday. And I say, guys are making catches like that. And truth be told, Cal Pitts' hands touched the ball. He could have caught the pass, right? So, and you're being paid. You know what I'm saying? So obviously it's gonna, it's a little difficulty to it, but I like it when the referees say, "No, I'm gonna let y'all play," right? And so that's what I thought about when he threw that pass. When I saw the end result, I said maybe he was throwing it up there, hoping for a 15-yard, but he didn't need that pass. It was some pressure in his face, but he kind of shrugged the pressure off. Probably should have, maybe looked to run, throw it out of bounds, live to fight another down because, it was still time left on the clock. It wasn't a Colorado situation where look, we're at the end of regulation and you have to throw this pass, right? I think it was like a minute 30, minute 20 something I left on the clock, if my memory serves me correctly. He didn't have to throw that pass. He didn't. But again, like I said, when you look at the final score, they were right there. Right now, again, I don't believe in moral victories whatsoever. I hate moral victories. You know what I'm saying? But again, I have to say, I still feel like Michigan State was the better team. So they're going to clean this up. You know what I'm saying? And get ready for next week, right? I'm not advocating. I know it may be some Michigan State fans. They may be saying, hey, how long of a leash are you going to give Aiden Childs, right? At this particular point in the season, he has more interceptions thrown than he has touchdowns. Missing some passes and things like that. How long of a leash are you going to give him? You know, and I think that as well, but at the same time, I'm almost like, well, I mean, the run game isn't there. He's not playing well. The offense is just, I mean, it's really hit or miss. It's very spotty. Nothing really consistent is going on. You know what I mean? I think, like I stated from the first game, I believe Vegas has them at the win total like four, maybe 4.5 games. So I mean, it's going to be hard. I must say it. It's going to be hard if the running game is not there and Aiden Childs does not improve um, on his decision making. Right? It's going to be hard moving forward. The schedule does not get any easier. It's going to be hard. But again, like I said, I'm enjoying covering the team. I like to see what they have. I like to see what happens when Nick Marsh and Glover come back because I do feel like that gives them, four weapons: Marsh, Glover, Foster, Velling, and even Johnson. Right? I feel like they have weapons. I do feel like, if Aiden Childs can show a little bit more consistency, I do think it'll be hard for any of the Big Ten teams to cover those guys. But unfortunately, he's gonna have to get some protection, right? So they got to get the protection. They're gonna get the protection together, to kind of help out. And I believe that was one of the things that they talked about, where some of the personnel groupings that they were in, they couldn't necessarily be in those personnel groupings because of some injuries. But it's gonna be interesting to see what they do next week, right? I'm sure they're gonna break down the tape, figure some things out. That was one of the questions that asked Coach Smith in the post game in reference to the offensive line, and he answered and said, "Hey, look, man, we're trying to get the best five on the field, right?" And that's what all teams are trying to do. We're trying to get the best five on the field. Try to get the communication together. And fair well, Boston College may have one of the better defensive fronts in college football, right? It's still relatively early, so maybe we may look back on this game and say, "Hey, look, that was just talented defensive front that we played against, right?" But they're gonna get it together, man. Because obviously Aiden Childs is gifted running the ball. You know what I mean? But that's not going to that's at the end of the day, that's not going to be a winning formula, right? And I do think the defense is playing well enough to keep them in games. I really do feel that way, right? Um, and then on the last touchdown Boston College, scored, I just chalked it up to just the just the field. You know what I mean? Like when you watch the play, you see Gross is in coverage, and you see the guy run by him, and he just loses his balance. Then Malik Spencer takes. I don't. He took an angle to me like he's going to try to go intercept the pass, but maybe the pass got to the receiver quicker than he thought, and so next thing you know, you see him. He's out of position. Gross is on the ground, and now you got Boston College big time. The look like at least that game their best receiver catching a touchdown, running into the end zone. You know what I mean? And like I said, again, prior to that play happening, Michigan State is up, and that's with three turnovers, right? So, like I said, I mean, but again, it is what it is. The game is over, but like I said, I still stand on the fact that I feel like Michigan State was still a much better team than Boston College, right? And I felt like Boston College played as good of a game as they could play, and I feel like Michigan State played not as bad of a game they could play, but from an offensive standpoint, that wasn't a very good performance offensively. But like I said, they were still in position to win the game. So we'll see what happens after that, man. But as always, man, like, share, subscribe, comment. Peace.